Sorry for the delay. I'm just really so honored to be here and talk to you about where God has sent me in my own personal journey, and then also my work, Imprint Hope's work in Uganda and East Africa. So I just wanted to start off with a quick story. One of my favorite movies is called The Chronicles of Narnia. Seems like from the nodding heads, a lot of people know that movie as well. So I don't need to give the background to it, but one of my favorite scenes from the Chronicles of Narnia is the last scene from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And in that last scene, there's Aslan, who's this great big lion, and he represents God the Father. And he's standing on the beach with Lucy and Edmund, who are two little children who've been sent to Narnia, this magical place where they've learned life lessons, and they've learned to be courageous, and they've learned how to trust God, Aslan. And Aslan looks up at Lucy and he says, "You know, Lucy, you and your brother will never come back to Narnia." And little Lucy, she's choking back tears, and she says, it isn't Narnia, you know, it's you. We won't meet you in our home country, and how can we live never meeting you?" And then Aslan pauses for a moment and he smiles and he says, "I am in your home country, but there I have another name. You must learn to recognize me by that name, for this was the very reason you were sent to Narnia. That by knowing me here for a little bit, you will know me better there." And I've often reflected back upon that scene from that movie, because I think each one of us in this room has been given a Narnia, a place, a journey, a person, a vocation, a job, where God has sent us to be his light and his love and his witness. And for many people, it's a journey, learning how to discover where is our Narnia. And so I wanted to segue into that, because my Narnia has become a place called Uganda. And it's a place where God has sent me to learn many beautiful life lessons, and I'm just really happy to share with you a little bit about that journey of my Narnia, how I've discovered it, and how God is using Uganda to teach me a little bit more about how much he loves me and how much he loves all of us. So I just wanted to start off with what do you guys think these are? Fingerprints, yes. So I just wanted to preface with the imprint hope. It was a revelation from many, many years of prayer with God, and I've always been fascinated by the idea of a fingerprint. Why each one of us in this room has a different fingerprint? Why do the millions and billions of people in the world have a different fingerprint? And I think it speaks to the fact that we all have we're all different, you know? We've all been created in the image and likeness of God, but yet we are fashioned differently, and we have a unique heart that God truly knows for who we are. And I love the idea of a fingerprint and how we can imprint something, a beautiful mark on the world for God. And that's where the term imprint hope came from. And I just wanted to preface with that, because growing up, for me, I grew up with a sister with a disability, and she has taught me so many beautiful life lessons in life. And I think the most beautiful lesson that Father was speaking to previously was that you find your life when you give it away in service of other people. And my sister Kate, has taught me that lesson in so many beautiful ways, because she's not able to achieve what we deem to be the summation and the purpose of life. You know, as Americans, we want to grow up and we want to do so many things, and we need to be known and have a great job and a salary and all of these things. But for many people with disabilities, they'll never be able to achieve what we believe to be the purpose of life in so many ways. And so her life has taught me that you truly find it when you give it away in service of other people. And growing up, I always wondered how people with disabilities were treated in other parts of the world. So I grew up in a large family around like 15 minutes from here in New Jersey. And I grew up just going to all of her doctor's appointments and therapy visits across the country. And I just saw how her life had just such a beautiful purpose, and it allowed me to delve into why God had created people with disabilities. And so this probing question led me to apply to multiple medical missions after graduating with my master's in 2012 in occupational therapy. So I went to Seton Hall University in South Orange, and I graduated in 2012, and I worked for 8 months at a hospital in Newark, New Jersey. And then I just wanted to go and see how people with disabilities were treated in other parts of the world. So I applied to an organization called Catholic Medical Mission Board. CMMB is a nonprofit organization that's been around for over 100 years, and they're based out of New York City. And so when they accepted my application, they told me, they said, we're sending you to Uganda. And in my mind, I'm just New Jersey girl, and I didn't even know where Uganda was actually in the world. So I Googled, I took out my phone and Googled where in the world is Uganda, because I just didn't know. So there is Uganda. I'm sure you guys all know where Uganda is because you're from different parts of the world. But for me, I didn't know. So God sent me to Uganda in 2013. He sent me to work at an orphanage with 300 children with disabilities. And it's actually where my older son, comes from. He lived at that orphanage for most of his life. And so what I saw during that year, I had a year-long commitment to that orphanage, and what I saw during that year really shocked me. It amazed me, but it also horrified me. Because what I saw is that some parents would come and they would visit their child at that orphanage, and they would be scared to even touch their child. They would tell me, I don't want to touch him. He has these seizures and he does these convulsions, and I don't want to get what he has. All right? They would be scared to even pick up their child from the mattress where their child was laying, because they didn't know if that child's disability was contagious or not. I saw a mom walking past this trash pit, and I saw a mom drop her child in the trash, and I was walking behind her, and the baby was crying, and she said, leave him, he's trash, I don't want him. And he was a boy with cerebral palsy and extremely emaciated and just incredibly in need of love. I saw parents go to hospitals and to rehabilitation places and walk away empty-handed with no knowledge about what their child's disability was and how to help their child. I'm sure all of you parents in the room know you inherently want your child to be the best that they can be. You want to be able to help your child. And I saw parents struggle not knowing how to help their child with their disability become who God created them to be. And it really made me sad, because I was wondering, my sister who has a disability has taught me so many life lessons. And by these parents dropping their child at an orphanage and walking away, they're denying themselves the opportunity to be who God created them to be, because God is using that child to teach them something they can't learn from anyone else. And so I came back from Uganda in 2014 with these lessons, with these images in my mind of what I was to do with that. What am I going to do with all of those images of those 300 children I worked with every single day, and those parents that I would see? What am I going to do with that? And so for a year and a half, I prayed through it. I started working again at a hospital in Newark, Children's Specialized Hospital. So I worked there as an occupational therapist working with children with disabilities. It was beautiful, I had a beautiful community of people around me, and I just kept on wrestling with the fact of what does God want me to do with those images and visions of what I had seen in Uganda. And so he gave me two choices. And one of them was like, Claire, you can live with those visions and images that you've seen, and you can pray for those people. And that's a beautiful thing. Or he told me, I can empower you with grace beyond human strength to go back to Uganda and empower that culture with truth regarding disabilities and the purpose of children with disabilities in our world. And so I wrestled with those two choices for a year and a half in prayer. And then finally in February of 2016, I started Imprint Hope, a nonprofit organization to empower a culture of life for people with disabilities in Uganda. So in June of 2016, I left my work and I moved to Uganda, in August of 2016. And so that was my home initially for 5 months, that mud hut that you see right there. When I went back to Uganda in August of 2016, my dream and my vision from God was that you have to go into the rural places of that country where no one wants to go, because most children with disabilities are in the rural villages. Because what do people do? They push them to the fringes of society. They marginalize them because they don't want people to see them, because they don't know the name of their child's disability and how to help them. So a lot of children with disabilities are hidden away in these rural villages, living with their parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles. So we started in one district. I recruited a Uganda social worker to come work with us. So we started in these rural villages, and we began meeting with government officials and leaders in the communities of these villages, and we began to ask them, where are the children with disabilities, because we want to help them. So we started going mud hut to mud hut to mud hut, meeting families who have children with disabilities, and began providing therapy service to them, medical care, and counseling and social work services to the families to learn how to understand their child's disability and basically how to help them become the best that they can be. So it was months and months of doing this, going from mud hut to mud hut, meeting with these families, and I began to see like my expectations of what I wanted to do in Uganda. God had something different in mind, because he showed me that going mud hut to mud hut was beautiful, but these people are so much convicted by what the village says that you need to take them out of their environment for a little bit of time and empower them with knowledge regarding their disability, their child's disability. So Imprint Hope initially started in these villages, and then we shifted to this rehabilitation medical educational center, where we take these families now and we train them outside of their village. We train them for 7 whole weeks regarding what is a disability, and then we send them back. So initially I had this expectation of what God wanted me to do, and then he shifted it constantly, and that was just a lot of grace through prayer. So what do? We serve one of the most marginalized and disadvantaged groups in all of society in Uganda. And we meet them exactly where they're at. We meet their family exactly where they're at. We accept them for who they are, and we try to embark upon a journey with them to help them achieve their full potential. So what is our mission? Our mission is to raise awareness and break down barriers and overcome the stigma that children with disabilities experience on a daily basis. And how do we do that? We educate communities, provide holistic rehabilitation, and we foster hope regarding the inherent dignity of every person living with a disability in Uganda. So our team has grown over the last 3 years. We're a collaboration of social workers, therapists, physical occupational speech therapists, doctors, nurses, human rights advocates, and microfinance teachers. And that was a picture that was taken like 8 months ago. We've actually have recruited a couple more Ugandan therapists and teachers to join our team. So that's what we do. We're a team of Ugandans and Americans, and what we do is we go into those villages that you see in that picture. So we go into these rural villages and we just empower these families regarding the truth of that. And I just have a quick video to share with you here.
When I saw preachers, Gabonda, Nebusai, Atanara Champa, Domara Hashi, Maja Kwashi, Yakula. Then I say Nashi, Subish. No Gobani, Kaja Karakoshi, Karima. I was thinking, Omana, I go to Korea, Zomaska, it's
being a young mother of 17 years, she was really negligent with the child and not feeding him. Like she didn't have that much love for him. But after our training and interfacing with different mothers that have children with disabilities, she started really caring for Precious, and we've seen great improvement in life of our child.
Nafuna amagezi ag'okubeezawo omwana wange n'obulamu bwange. Omwana wange bwashuuka nga akulya kwaki, atuula, ayavula, yakulira essanyu.
Usanga mutabani wange atuuse mpulira emikono ntasobola kukola kintu kyonna asobola okwegeza.
There is so much hope in their child because of the changes they see as they keep on doing therapy. When these families go back to their different communities, the community members are eager to see what they have learned while with us. So I think we're not only impacting one family, like we're changing communities at large. Just because they're seeing the change that we're putting in these families' lives, these parents can see the power that is in them and how strong they are. There won't be so much change in the lives of children with disabilities in this country. Being a parent to a child with a disability, it's a blessing, and God chose them for a good reason, because they're the best parent out of everyone.
Mama and Tata Precious. Tata in Uganda means father. So when you hear me say Tata, that's what it means. So Precious, this little boy here, he was found Mama and Tata Precious, the father had run off, as you have seen in the video, because he thought that the child was a curse from the mother's side of the family. So what we did is we invited Mama Precious to the training program, the 7-week training course. She came with Precious, her son, and during that time our team of social workers were tracing the father and figured he wasn't far, he was just in another village. So we traced down the father and we invited him to the training course, because what we do is we train the moms for 6 weeks with us. They stay with us at Imprint Hope Center, of Healing Hearts and Restoring Hope. So they come for the training for 6 weeks, and in the last week, the 7th week, the father comes. And the father takes a condensed version of the program with us. So when the father came, he attended the classes that we offer in terms of we teach them about the brain, we teach them how the human body works, we teach them about nutrition, the human rights of people with disabilities, and we teach them specifically about what is cerebral palsy, what is epilepsy, what is hydrocephalus, what are these various conditions that you might see in Uganda regarding disability. So when the father began to grasp that it wasn't the wife's fault or his fault, he was just so free. You know, and it was beautiful seeing that in him, that he was almost like released from this cage that he had been living with, like these lies that surrounded him. And then he saw his child attending therapy where he was learning how to sit up and he was learning how to stand and walk, and it was just so liberating for him to see that. And so after Imprint Hope, the husband and wife started living together again, and they started supporting each other. And you saw from outside of their mud hut those parallel bars. Imprint Hope did not build those parallel bars, they did. Because the parents were so empowered by what they saw at Imprint Hope, because we have parallel bars at the center, but they wanted to create that for themselves at their mud hut. So they built those own parallel bars in front of them, because they had, like, parents have this beautiful resilience and they want to persevere and fight. And once you give them that little bit of knowledge, they just run with it. And it's just really beautiful to see. And my favorite line from that video is that the hands that used to do nothing, he now uses to feed himself. And it's just so empowering to know that a child can be really move from isolation in a village and in a family into a community of being loved and accepted for who God created them to be. So, pardon me?
Mike.
The mic. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, you can't hear me. So yeah, I just wanted, I think the best way to describe what we do in Uganda is through stories. So I just have one more story, and then I just want to segue into like how God has used Imprint Hope to teach me so many life lessons and to leave just a message with you all today. So this is another girl named Sophie. Sophie is in a rural village of Uganda called Chiriola. When we first went to Sophie's village, we found Sophie on the outskirts of the village. She has something called epilepsy, and so she has febrile seizures where she was just convulsing multiple times a day. And the people in the village thought she was a crazy person. So what they would do is they would push her to the outskirts of that village, and they wouldn't feed her, and they wouldn't bathe her very well. And the mom and dad that were there were just ashamed of their own child. They didn't know what to do to help them. So we found Sophie, and we began educating the parents regarding the disability, getting her on the medication she needed to stabilize the seizures so that they weren't happening as frequently, and then began therapy, with her so that she could learn how to become mobile and become a part of that village. And I remember initially when we got Sophie a wheelchair, the people around her whole village, because it was a really tight-knit village, and it was like mud hut to mud hut to mud hut, so the people were really closely connected. And I remember the one time we brought Sophie a wheelchair, the neighbors would not even allow their children to push Sophie in that wheelchair. They were like, no, don't touch that one. You might get that. So it was just even so powerful for me to see how, like, even the wheelchair, they wouldn't even allow their own children to push. And I was like, oh my goodness, like what do we do with this this intense level of stigma and shame regarding disabilities in Uganda? So what we did is that we began this program where we educate now whole villages at a time regarding disabilities, because the parents come for the 7-week training course, and then we go back into that very village and we educate the whole village regarding the child's disability in that village, so the stigma regarding disabilities can slowly be broken down and people can be understood for who God created them to be. So Sophie's been a part of our program for 3 years now, and a couple months ago, she started walking, so I just wanted to show you this video of her. I don't know. It's a link.
Over on this side?
Yeah. It's a video, but I don't know. Yeah. But regardless, it's just a video of Sophie walking for the first time. She's 8 years old. So just really empowering. And then she now goes back and she lives in her village now, and she is walking, and she's accepted for who her family tells the people who she is and the name of her disability, and she's more readily eager to play with the other children too. There she goes. No, that's good. That's right there, yeah. So, awesome. Great, thank you so much. Yeah. These are the skills that we do at Imprint Hope. We educate whole families regarding the person's disability, the child's disability. We provide therapy to the family. We do the village visits. So once the family attends the training course, we go back into that family's village and we visit them on a weekly or monthly or bi-monthly basis. So once they leave the training, it's not goodbye, it's we'll see you later. And then another component of our program is microfinance. So what does that mean? When the parents come to us, most of them have never been to school. So most of them don't know how to read or write. So what we do is we do a 6-week training course regarding business skills to teach the family small business skills and how to have a budget and to operate a little business in their home village to support their child's medical and nutritional needs. So we have the microfinance component, which has been really successful for a lot of our families. In the picture there, you'll see a mom with her daughter Calvin. Calvin was a twin. And so what she did upon leaving Imprint Hope was that we at Imprint Hope, we provide her with a loan to start her small scale business. So what she did is she started a juice business where we purchased for her a refrigerator and pots and pans and a stove. And what she does is she makes pineapple ginger juice every single day while her child is in the home. And she goes out and she puts Calvin on her back and she walks around the village selling juice every single day. And we gave her a loan of roughly $180, and she is 1.5 years later, she's completely paid off the loan, and now she's operating her business and recruiting all of that, the funding from that business herself to support her child's medical nutritional needs. So the microfinance portion of our program has been really, really successful for a lot of our families. So yeah, I just. This one here is the end. So what do we do? Like, I think God has sent me on a beautiful journey at Imprint Hope and in Uganda. But most importantly, over the last 3 years, so I left America in 2016, and I came back a couple months ago. So I was living in Uganda for the last 3 years and a couple of months. And God, He really moved my heart in so many ways. I can't tell you when you launch a nonprofit and then you move overseas and you are recruiting all the funding and you're recruiting staff and you're working on so much HR stuff and all the moving parts of a nonprofit organization. I have felt completely powerless in so many ways. And I remember some nights, like after long days at the rehabilitation center and working in the villages, and I've also adopted these 2 boys, and just after putting my boys to bed and just going back up and working at my desk, and I just felt so overwhelmed by the amount of needs, surrounding the whole people and surrounding the organization. And literally, in all honesty, some nights I would just literally drop to my knees and just open up my hands and I would just pray, like, God, like, I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left in me to persevere another day. Like, fill me with grace beyond strength to persevere, because I don't have anything left inside me to serve. And in those moments, it's been just a beautiful life lesson. I would feel like a pair of hands literally just hold me in those moments. And He would hold me, and then He would just give me the grace to stand up and to persevere another day, another day, another day. Because I had felt so completely powerless in terms of my capabilities to serve and to love these people that God has placed before me. But I have learned this beautiful mentality of being freely dependent. And I know that's a paradox, because how can you be free and yet be dependent upon someone? And I've often reflected upon that, because I am so free in Uganda, because I know I'm exactly where God wants me to be, but I'm also completely dependent upon Him to give me the grace to know what to do. And it's been such a beautiful journey for me, being humbled enough to fall to my knees and to receive the grace that God has given me in each and every moment. Because I really believe it's grace in the moment, because I remember walking into my boss's office in 2016 at Children's Specialized Hospital, and I told her I was leaving the job and I was going back to Uganda to work to launch a nonprofit overseas. And she looked at me like I was crazy. She was like, well, how are you going to survive? What are you going to do? And I told her, I'm going to fundraise. I'm going to fundraise my salary. I'm going to fundraise to help those people in Uganda. And I'm going to do this. And so she was like, well, Claire, like, if there's anything, the hospital, like, if it means your salary is too little, like, we can work with you and we can get you any salary you want, to stay. And I looked at her really closely and I said, I'm not in this profession for the money. You know, I'm in this profession to serve and to help people with disabilities be the best that they can be. And so I often reflected back upon that, because in that moment, if God had revealed to me that Claire, 3 years later, you would not only be fundraising for your own personal salary, but you'd be fundraising for 100 medical bills of children in Uganda and 15 Ugandan staff members and the operational expenses of a whole organization, I honestly tell you, I would never have walked into my boss's office that day, because that mere fact would have just overwhelmed me, you know, to think about what God could do with walking through one open door. And I think that's how God works with our hearts. He slowly reveals to us the bigger picture. Maybe it's like that one day where it's like, oh, I want to go help that person. And then he slowly, as they say in Uganda, mpula, they say slowly by slowly. They say that all the time. You have to do it slowly by slowly. He slowly by slowly reveals to us the bigger picture of how God is using our individual hearts to serve him in the grander scheme of life. So I just wanted to encourage you today to know that sometimes it's just like one open door that he reveals to us, and then he slowly by slowly reveals to us another door to walk through, and then another person he wants us to help, and then by slowly he fills our hearts with so much joy, because many people ask me how do you survive over there, and like all these questions of like, are you happy? And well, you don't have anything that we have here, like in America, living in those rural villages and everything. And I can honestly tell you, the last 3 years of my life living in Uganda, I've been the happiest I've ever been in life, and I've been filled with so much joy in my heart, because I know that I'm exactly where God wants me to be, and that I'm using all of my gifts and talents to serve him above all. And I think that's where the real joy in life comes from. And that's what I've learned from a lot of years of service, but also from my whole life growing up, is that you truly find your life when you give it away for other people. And I just wanted to encourage you all in that today. So thank you so much.